This video is brought to you by Squarespace.
Did anybody order some nightmare fuel? As some of you may remember, I made a video back in September where I turned a bunch of Pinterest images that you guys submitted to me on Instagram into monster girls, and did so by arranging a bunch of them onto boards and using an amalgamation of those images as my inspiration for the character designs. And in this video, I only had the opportunity to do 4 characters. I loved all the concepts that I was able to come up with, but behind the scenes, I came up with even more, and I kind of was not willing to abandon those ideas, especially since many of them are just pure nightmare fuel. So for this week, I wanted to make kind of a pseudo part 2 follow-up to that video using some of those unused ideas from the first time, pulling from the exact same batch of submissions as I did in that first video, and make some more monstrous character designs, this time really leaning even more into the nightmare fuel of it all since we are a lot closer to Halloween. So like I said, there are several unused concepts that I really want to use for this video. Some I've already built the boards out for, but I am going to go back through my submissions again, just see if the inspiration hits in a different way this time around. Basically see if I can use even more of your submissions this time, because since so many submissions come in, I don't really get to use that many of them. And that's the other reason why I think creating a whole board of your ideas is such a fun way to use them. That way it's like a collaboration between a whole bunch of you. I'm definitely going to go through submissions at least one more time, but I think for now I have a decent foundation of ideas that I really want to pull from for this. So while off camera Kira is marinating those other ideas, allow me to take a moment to tell you about this video sponsor, Squarespace. The spookiest thing about Squarespace is that I use it as a hub for all of the orphaned character designs that I create in the process of making these videos. That's right, I host my main art portfolio on Squarespace, which has an amalgamation of all of the pieces of art that I am most proud of, but I also host several other galleries and even more specific pages that have to do with my different crafting and character design niches. By hosting my portfolio with Squarespace, I could get started super easily by using one of their professionally designed flexible website templates that I could then customize with my choice of text, colors, different custom website graphics that I created for myself, and of course custom pages. Some of those pages are dedicated galleries for the costume and clothing and cosplay side of the niche that I do here. I have one for the different sculptures that I made, and I even have a dedicated area where I've created character profiles, because whenever it comes to my character designs, I practice favoritism. And I was able to create all of these galleries and pages super easily and intuitively with their drag and drop website builder, Fluid Engine. This allowed me to add all of the media and text and links I wanted with the click of a button, and keeping all those galleries continuously updated is similarly easy with tools like automatic image scaling, which allow me to also add new media to those galleries with the click of a button, and Squarespace will do the arranging and aesthetic stuff for me. But Squarespace offers more than just visual customization. They have lots and lots of different website tools, like SEO tools to get you in search results, super extensive website analytics for every single aspect of your website, and another of my personal favorites, their e-commerce platform. They have selling tools to accommodate whatever kind of seller you are, even if you are a lazy seller like me, because they also boast a custom merch feature. This allows you to partner with a print-on-demand service that will handle inventory, production, and shipping of your merchandise for you. That way you can actually focus on producing the art, and you don't have to worry about the logistical side of things as much. So whether you're an artist in need of a portfolio or a seller in need of a super robust online store, you can head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch your site, you can head to squarespace.com/pricklyalpaca to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you as always to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now let's make some nightmare fuel. Hello, welcome back. So before we get into the actual art for this video, I just want to give a tiny little content warning for, you know, a little bit of blood, a little bit of gore, dark themes, disturbing imagery. I'll probably give a dedicated content warning before each illustration that I do, but I just wanted to let you know, if you're really sensitive to any of that stuff, this might not be the video for you. But again, I will chime in with more specific content warnings before each illustration, so if some of them are palatable and some of them aren't, you know, feel free to skip around. It's fine. Anyways, let's get started.
So first up, we have this poison apple board, which includes submissions from D4 Almy. Apologies for all of the mispronunciations that will inevitably happen in this video. And the rest of these were compiled by me because I just got into a particular vibe and mood. And content warnings for this one, just a little bit of gore, bugs, and overall gross stuff. So like I said, the premise for this one is a poison apple ghoul, so very much inspired by the poison apple from Snow White that I had on the inspo board, but also like the whole razor blades and apples hoax, and also just like rotting, decaying apples, sort of like in an orchard, any of the unpicked apples at the end of the season. I kind of envision her as a harbinger of decay. You think you picked a bunch of nice, delicious apples? Well, you better watch out. She's gonna to get to them and make them go bad faster than you thought they would. So design-wise, I wanted her to be a mix of like cute and gross. Since apples have such round silhouettes, I really wanted to lean into that for a lot of the clothing and silhouette that was going on. I also wanted her to be kind of like a little bit rounder and plumper, just make her look like really adorable and really like bubbly and active. She's like very delighted to cause havoc and mayhem. I really wanted that to come across in the pose, in the expression that was going on. I've really been trying to make more of an effort lately to pose my characters according to the personality that I envision them having, and really trying to like wrap that whole thing into basically every aspect of the illustration, not just have them in like a static pose. I feel like that's way more boring, a lot less dynamic. Along with that, I've also been trying to put a lot more emphasis on the hands and giving them some kind of a gesture or a pose that relates to the characterization. So for this one, I gave her like a poison apple pie in one hand, and then in the other hand, she's got like an apple behind her back that's presumably poisoned, or maybe there's some razor blades dug into it, you don't know, but she's like kind of hiding it. She's got sort of a mischievous gesture going on. Like I said, outfit-wise, I wanted to keep it very cute. I kind of imagine her as like a ghoulish creature. I don't know what else to call this kind of creature, but I think she would be friends with the candy ghoul that I made in part 1 of this. So I wanted to give her similar cutesy, energetic vibes and kind of give her like a bit of a modern outfit. So I gave her this like poofy apple themed dress, just giant, ridiculous apple sleeves going on, a baby doll cut, kind of inspired by the Selkie dresses that I absolutely love and use the silhouette of all the time. Sorry, I hope that's not getting too boring. I gave her some little ruffly socks and matching cuffs around her wrists and some like chunky Mary Jane style shoes. I don't know exactly what to call the style of shoe, but just, you know, chunky, modern, fashionable. Dress for the job you want, and the job she wants is putting poison in pies and razor blades and apples, apparently. I also gave her a little like detachable Peter Pan collar thing that I tried to make look like the mix between an apple leaf and just like the drippy green poison. I don't know how successful I was at that, but it looks okay. For the hair, I was also slightly boring and just gave her like twin giant space buns because I wanted to carry that apple shape into the hair as well, and I am just a sucker for this hairstyle. I probably use it too much in my character designs, but you know, I decided I'm gonna zhuzh it up a little bit this time because the real magic of this design comes in whenever we start getting a little bit gross with it. For the face, I knew that I wanted it to be kind of like human underneath, but mostly ghoulish, spooky on top, so I gave her kind of like a mask or some kind of, I like to think that it's like a dripping, wet, oozy green substance on her face. Maybe she excretes this to make it even more gross because she herself is like actively decaying, and this green substance is on her shoulder apples. It's just dripping everywhere. Maybe her excretion is the poison and that's what she puts in her pie because the pie is also dripping this green ooze. Very tasty snack. And since her physical form that she presents in is just oozing, decaying, leaky, I decided to give her just a mess of open wounds all over her legs and arms and, you know, obviously face, since her, you know, cranium is like exposed. And this is definitely where some of the gore comes in because I made those open wounds quite gaping and, you know, they feel like they're decomposing a little bit. I gave her an eyeball hanging out of her eye socket, which I don't know if that's too much for YouTube. I did warn about the gore. It's not like too realistically rendered or anything, but you know, sometimes you're just working on a sketch and you go, let me do this real quick. Is that too much? Anyways, in addition to the decay that is happening, you know what comes along with decomposition? The little critters that are breaking that down, causing the decomposition. Going back to the hair accessorization that I did to make my twin bun hairstyle a little bit less generic, I gave her a plethora of worms hanging out. I kind of wanted them to look like a trendy little braided hairstyle, but make it worms, you know, just girly things. I also gave her just like a bunch of bugs and maggots kind of feasting on the open wounds and flesh that's going on, you know. Very, very tasty, very appetizing. I hope to God no one's like eating while watching this. I'm very sorry. And because I decided there wasn't enough like gaping going on in this design, I also decided to kind of give her a huge open wound on her abdomen underneath her skirt, which I forgot to mention earlier. I tried to make her skirt look like that rounded shape that you get whenever you eat an apple down to the core. So it's like kind of an apple core skirt going on. That way you can see like the mold and everything inside the apple. Anyways, she's got a little bit of an exposed abdomen thing going on. And since mold is definitely one of the little decomposition fellas that's gonna hit apples very quickly, I added lots of mold all over her gaping open wounds, just having a feast themselves. Admittedly, this design is kind of like personal to me because I don't know about anyone else, but I find mold, rotting fruit, just the decomposition of vegetation especially, just to be like extra gross. Like, it's a texture thing. I have such an aversion to it. I also had an incident with old corn earlier this year that absolutely rocked my world, and I don't want to talk about it. And another disturbing tidbit that I had on my mind while I was drawing this is I've heard that human decomposition has a bit of like a rotting fruit smell to it, like that's part of the smell palette, which is just absolutely delightful, and I think that that does play into the whole concept going on here. So yeah, a lot of really lovely things. Anyways, when it came to like doing a little bit of rendering on this, I did just try to make it look, you know, gross, wet, slimy, reflective. I ended up not liking how the little like apple core barrettes in the hair looked, so I added even more worms to the hair, so that's really just delightful as well. And you'll see at the end, but I also forgot to add teeth for a little while, and when I add teeth to this, the vibe definitely changes and it gets worse. Anyways, like I said earlier, this character is just a nasty girl. She is just out to get to your fruit. I'm sure she won't limit it to just apples, just like any fruit you have. She's gonna inject it with her poison ooze, and she's gonna make it rot and decay and make it up to her standards. As you can see here, that's just really the environment that she's a fan of, and I don't think she sees it as necessarily a malicious thing. She's just like, let me fix that for you. I think that's why she's so enthusiastic. She's just like, no, this won't do. And she just makes something oozy and gross and poisonous. And I definitely like the poison apple vibe for the reason that, like, you know, the apple seeds contain like very, very small amounts of cyanide, but maybe, you know, her poisonous secretions, perhaps that's like an active ingredient and it's like a lot more cyanide than you would find in just like a couple of apple seeds. That's just sort of what I like to think her whole deal is. And this is absolutely a little creature that you would never see for long, just like a flash and then vanished, you know? Like maybe early mornings in the apple orchard if you go out there. She'll be trying to do her worst to the apples that have like fallen on the ground, and if she gets caught, she's like, ooh, I gotta go. Anyways, finally, I added a bunch of flies buzzing around her because that would absolutely happen, and my nasty apple girl is done. So next up, we have this board, which is comprised of a lot of fall vibes, but focusing a lot on like nice pumpkin spice drinks and treats. I did include a couple of characters in this video that are not nightmare fuel, just to give you guys a bit of a reprieve here and there. But this board includes submissions from Weeb_Tanuki, Creata_Guardian_Productions, Leeson.pa, Fizzy Wizzy Mizzy, Ashkey Pup 3, and Bellarita.14. So my idea for this one is just kind of silly and funny. I wanted to take a bunch of disparate images that didn't really have a particular theme and lean into a cute idea that I had, and that is to make a pumpkin spice vampire. Let me explain. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm absolutely absolutely a stereotype. I love some pumpkin spice. It's just unironically very good most of the time when done correctly. I love a coffee. I love a pumpkin roll cake. I love a pie. And I get made fun of frequently for all of these things by all of my loved ones. God forbid a girl like seasoning. And when I make vampire characters, I'm always sort of fascinated with the dietary aspect of their characterization and sort of how they like to feed. I've made vampire characters in the past that have like a specific feeding pattern, like they like to feed on a particular kind of person, or they like to establish a certain relationship before they feed on someone. Very serial killer energy. Not great, but you know, like that's vampires for you. And this is gonna get definitely like creepy, but like wouldn't vampires have a preference for like a certain kind of blood based upon the diet of the individual? Like, wouldn't there be vegan vampires who like to feed on people who like don't eat animal meat or anything? Would there be like Paleolithic vampires? Would there be vampires who are really into people who eat a lot of like junk food? I think there definitely would be, which leads me to the idea, what if, you know, we had a little vampire girl who also likes some spice, some seasoning. So you might think where I'm going with this is a vampire who just likes to eat pumpkin spice or like suck the pulp of pumpkins or just eat pumpkin puree. That's the direction my partner thought I was going in with this character. I was like, pumpkin spice vampire. And he was like, oh, that's cute. And I was like, no. I'm sure this vampire definitely enjoys like a little pumpkin spice treat from time to time. Kind of like how on Buffy some of the vampires just randomly eat human food for some reason. I'm looking at you, Spike. It's super weird and inconsistent, but this vampire definitely prefers to feed on people who are consuming an excess of pumpkin spice goods during the fall season. This essentially means like, yes, I would definitely fall victim to this vampire because my blood is just soaking up the pumpkin spice. I had some today. I had some the day before today. I'm gonna have some tomorrow. If I came face to face with this vampire, I would be in trouble. So basically here I just wanted to design a cute little fall girly, but make it vampire. So design wise and outfit wise, I was really trying to go for a mix of like classic vampiric fashion and like slight gothic motifs and stereotypical fall girly fashion, like the tall boots, the knee socks, a cute little scarf, maybe a dirndl. So since these are kind of two disparate fashion styles, I had a little bit of difficulty trying to find my footing here. At first I was gonna go for a cute little pinafore with some like pumpkin inspired motifs going on, but I decided that was a little bit too fall and it didn't really incorporate any of those like vampiric elements. So I went back in and I kind of tweaked the pinafore and the design of some of the things. In the end, I kind of designed for her a pinafore waistcoat combo situation. She's got a cute little orange underdress with like a ruched bust line and like poofy pumpkin looking sleeves, but then the hem of that has like a bit of a bat wing motif to it to make it a little bit gothic, a little spookier, and then over that I put a bit of like a darker waistcoat situation with bat wings kind of swooping down just to give her more of a dramatic gothic element. And then I also gave her matching like swooshy bell sleeves over top of the sleeves of the pumpkin dress. To accessorize, I gave her the obligatory tall fuzzy fall knee socks. I gave her some calf height boots that I had a bit of trouble designing. At first I was just going to give her a chunky boot, but I wanted to bring that sharpness a little bit more into the design, so I gave them like a super sharp point at the toe and then a stiletto heel and a little bat wing motif at the back to just try to carry that throughout the rest of the design. I also gave her, once again, an obligatory scarf. I'm gonna leave that in because I like to prank you guys into thinking your phone went off. I also gave the ends of this scarf a similar batwing motif. Just again, I love using a motif throughout a design just to try and unify everything a little bit. And the hair is one of the main places that I wanted to bring in some like pumpkin spice latte energy. I gave her a whole mess of super long, curly at the bottom hair, kind of like going off Lolita vibes a little bit, just since that like gothic Lolita fashion is a bit of an inspiration for the rest of the outfit. I figured that hair would match well. And I gave her 2 little buns at the top of her head, but I made them a little bit more conical, kind of giving them more of a bat ear shape. Again, trying to bring gothic elements and mixing them in with like a softer thing. I also gave her some big fluffy scrunchies around the buns to kind of look a little bit like whipped cream or the crust of a pumpkin pie, something like that. And I gave her some little hairpins in the back too that look like cinnamon sticks that you would put in like a pumpkin spice latte or something like that. I also gave her the classic 90s bangs and some little wispy pieces on her temples because I wanted to style them to look a little bit like vampire fangs. I also gave her pointy ears because that's just something that I like to do with my vampire characters, makes them a little bit less human looking. And of course I gave her a set of really sharp vampire fangs. And once again with this character, I was trying to tie the pose into the personality and characterization, so I kind of made her like biting her finger a little bit, kind of looking around in anticipation, sort of like looking a little nervous, looking a little hungry. The energy is almost, I am going through pumpkin spice withdrawal and I am currently seeking my next snack, which I too experience pumpkin spice withdrawal and am usually looking for my next snack, so I can empathize with her a little bit here. So admittedly, whenever I was working on this, I was mostly focused on like pumpkin drinks, mostly like pumpkin coffee, and taking inspiration from that for the design. So I wish I had included some other pumpkin-y aspects to it. I feel like I could have gotten a little bit more creative with some of the outfit styling and the motifs if I just had a little bit more to pull from, but that's okay. Most of the beverage inspiration and the inspiration from the board itself came through in the coloring process. I just pasted the entire board onto my canvas whenever I was working on this and color picked directly from that for the colors in my design. I tweaked some of them here and there, but I was really trying to stick mostly to the color palette that we created together through your submissions. But despite this, I gotta say I really struggled with the coloring process on this. For some reason, monochromatic color schemes like this are a big struggle for me, and you wouldn't think so, but it is. And I guess you would even call this a little bit more of like an analogous color scheme because there's some like browns and yellows and some more reddish tones in here, but it's still like just a struggle. I had like a very specific image in my head for this character, and I think I was originally going to make her a little bit more pastel and like cutesy, and I think that would have been really adorable, but I did inevitably end up adding some darker tones to this to bring in like gothic vampire vibes and also just create a little bit more contrast because the tones were just looking a little too samey. I was not getting enough contrast with just like browns and tans and that sort of thing. But I'll be honest, I just straight up struggled through the entire coloring process through the end. I didn't really love how a lot of it looked, and I did a lot of paint overs here and there to improve the coloration and just add more clarity to the pose and a couple of the like outfit details. You'll see it a little later in the recording, but I did end up changing a lot of the darker like reddish brown tones that are in the design to more of like a deep green tone, which I think is fine because it does like pull a lot from my inspo board, but I do think it departs a little bit from like pumpkin spice desserts and that sort of thing. Like green isn't very evocative of that, so in the end I think I kind of prefer the colors that I had going on beforehand. But I was mostly just trying to create a little bit of like visual rest because as I was working on this, my eyes were just getting really overwhelmed by the sheer amount of like orangey brown tones going on. Anyways, nearing the end of the illustration, I did give her a little like pumpkin spice drink in her hand because I just didn't like the gesture of the hand that was floating. I think it's in character too, it fits her vibe. And to add even more characterization to this, I did add a little background, and I was playing around a lot with the idea of like a victim lying behind her, and I at first had like a full body victim behind her. which I decided was too much, so I just sort of like put, you know, the snack that she just enjoyed off to the side, sort of lying on the ground. That's where all of the like blood on her mouth came from, presumably. And I even have like a little bit of the blood like trailing into her coffee that she's got in her hand. Pretty gross. That's like where the horror of this illustration comes in. This one's a little bit more like conceptually disturbing and less like visually disturbing, but I hope it still served as somewhat of a palette cleanser. And if not, this one should serve as also a pretty decent palette cleanser. This is actually an ancient unused board in character design from all the way back in 2024 that I found in my folders, forgot about, and I figured I would just pepper it into this episode because I feel like it fits pretty well. And a couple of the images on this board were also submitted by other people in this batch. These submissions are from June 980 and D4 Almy. So I don't remember exactly what the premise of this episode was supposed to be. I think that it may have been like some creature design stuff, which makes a little bit of sense because sometimes whenever I do creature design, I get all excited about it and then I immediately just blank on ideas, even whenever I have a bunch of good prompts in front of me. Apparently I did like this prompt and I was able to get started with it pretty quickly because I finished an entire illustration and then forgot about it. But for this one, I do remember I wanted to make just a cool, whimsical little guy, and specifically a tea or just general beverage cat. But I did want him to be much more of like a creature and not just straight up a cat. On the board, there's that white three-eyed cat with the big old ears, and I kind of wanted to lean a lot into him for this character design and kind of expand out. So not necessarily the most spooky of character designs, but he is like a little weird and wacky and whimsical. I feel like he could show up in some kind of weird, spooky media. He is slightly off-putting in that way. So to match the three eyes that he has, I gave him three tails, and I wanted him to definitely be standing up, like more bipedal. That way he could use his little hands for things, you know? He's got tea to serve, he's got beverages and snacks. And I think whenever I was designing him, I definitely envisioned him to fit into some kind of weird fantasy universe, but one that had maybe like some steampunk elements to it, one that had some like weird mutated creatures that are humanoid but also a little bit more anthro and like furry-ish. So I basically took that structure with all the potions on it from the reference image and made it into this little like walking cafe that he has like hanging around his waist and spiraling upwards. This provides plenty of room for him to have like mugs hanging from it and like different flavorings and like beverages and snack places, and then I also gave it like one main sort of receptacle at the top where he probably keeps like hot water or pre-brewed tea or something. And I kind of envisioned that the like swirling branches are even more of like a pipe system where he can like press a button and pour out tea or coffee or other similar beverages. I did go just absolutely crazy with the detail and the whimsy on this one. I did put him in a very in-character pose. I do remember whenever I was drawing this, I definitely wanted him to be like serving tea and serving something else at the same time, and to be able to accomplish that, I gave him an extra set of like front arms so that he can be pouring tea with one set of arms and like serving pie with another set. Just super weird and whimsical. I feel like this is a character that could almost exist in like a Star Wars-esque universe too, just because he does read as like a little bit more alien. Since he is a little bit more humanoid, I did give him like some clothing, but not like excessively heavy clothing or anything, just a couple of accessories. I gave him an apron, because you gotta have an apron whenever you're serving food and beverages and that sort of thing. I gave him a couple of bandages on his like arms and legs, just because, you know, anime stuff. He also gives like anime and PC energy, so I think I was leaning into that as well. On the anime note, I gave him like a little headband. I don't know exactly why I did this, I just think that it looked cute. It made him look like, oh yeah, I'm wearing my headband, I'm serving tea. I also, like when you zoom in, you can tell that I gave him a little name badge on his apron that says Mr. Meow on it, which is so adorable and stupid, I love it. And speaking of adorable and stupid, to round things off, I also gave him like little tea bag earrings hanging off of his big fluffy ears, which is really, really cute. I didn't even notice that I did that whenever I like looked at this again after not having seen it for a while. I was on some shenanigans with this illustration, and as if that wasn't enough whimsy for his character design, I gave him a third eye, which I think is really fun because I gave him like kind of a closed eye pose with his two like ordinary cat eyes, and then I left that one open, which is like a little creepy, a little ominous. I think it plays into the themes of this video. And I also gave him some like little cheek blushies. He's so happy to be doing his little job, running his small business. I'm proud of him. I'm sure he would make a mean pumpkin spice latte for the vampire girly we just covered. Anyways, as this illustration progresses, it definitely just gets more and more whimsical. I was absolutely leaning hard into all of the whimsy goth elements in the inspo board. I included lots and lots of little details everywhere, all the little mugs, all of the little like tea set things. I even gave the pie like a star-shaped crust. I gave him a little like stained glass inspired patchwork apron, and I also included like lots of little gold dangly bits. I feel like this is almost like an auditory thing so that customers can hear him coming and like recognize the sound. Like he just makes a little jingle as he walks around, which is very like cat collar bell coded, and that is very, very cute. And as the illustration progresses, I also added like a lot more detail to the utensils and to like the little tools that he's got and his cutting board. I made the receptacle, quote unquote, at the top look more like an actual teapot, and I gave it some little like steam coming out of there. I just went like really hard on this image, and in the end, I don't know why I didn't end up using it for any video. I think that he is so cute and endearing, and personality and characterization wise, I think that he would be just like a kindly older man cat who has his like little small business. Maybe this is his retirement plan and whatever kind of weird universe he lives in. I feel like this is almost a character that you could like encounter in Halloween Town or something like that, and he's just like one of the weird residents that's just very kind and endearing, and he's gonna give you a slice of pie and make you a cup of tea. So staying on the subject of cats, we have this pumpkin cat board, which includes submissions from On3, Abby_Strawberry, Captain Bex, Gummy Fangs, and Novel and Quill. So I actually had a pretty difficult time coming up with ideas for this one, just because with a pumpkin cat, there's so many directions you can go in, and at first you can see I was really playing around with more of like a cutesy humanoid thing. These are actually sketches that I did whenever I was working on the last video that just didn't end up making the cut, but I definitely wanted to revisit the concept here. And I didn't really like the cutesy humanoid thing for the purposes of this video. You know, the deeper in we get, we are trying to capture some nightmare fuel, so I decided I wanted to go for more of like a creature design direction. So I started messing around and drawing just some weird cats that are just not quite right, really emphasizing the length of cats and exaggerating that feature. At one point I drew a cat with like 3 heads that was real snaky and long and unsettling, and I found him very endearing, but I did decide to simplify this concept a little bit and basically go for a very similar like body composition and design with like the long neck of it all and the long body, but just with 1 head. And something else from the first long snaky concepts that I liked was I decided to make the heads like chomping down on some pumpkins, which led me to the idea of making this like a feline chomp pumpkin monster. Basically, the concept for this fella is that he just stalks around and he's gonna eat your pumpkins. He loves pumpkins. He likes to chomp down on them. He likes to swallow them nearly whole. He's a messy eater. He's a disgusting eater. He does not take delicate little bites, which is why he can unhinge his whole jaw and like part of his neck so that he can just swallow pumpkins that are way too big. It's very snake-like, his whole digestion process, I would imagine. Anyways, design-wise, I just wanted to make him long and super weird and give him like a real uncanny quality going on. I wanted to keep the anatomy pretty close to a standard cat, but just like elongate everything, make him like extra bony. I pulled a lot from the boniness of like a naked cat for him, and I also really emphasized his like rib cage and some of his muscles and his claws. And of course, the main point of interest is his face. So I tried to make him look scary, but also kind of derpy overall. Like I gave him like little eyeballs that point in different directions. And on my board, someone also sent a cat that had 3 eyes. So I gave him an extra little eye on his forehead that's just like kind of looking at nothing in particular. And in his mouth, I of course gave him a big pumpkin that he's chomping down on. He's enjoying like a delicious little snack. And the way I drew his jaw is like not very like anatomically possible. I just wanted to make it look like really derpy and weird and almost like a little bit too flexible so that it can really wrap around a pumpkin and like chomp down on it. Which realistically, if someone was gonna chomp down on a pumpkin, they would need significantly more jaw strength than he probably has. But like, you know, we're doing some make-believe here today. Don't worry about it. I also made sure to give him like some real pointy ears just to make him look a little bit more feral, because this is definitely a feral boy. And I of course gave him another pumpkin that he's holding with his claws, because one pumpkin is not enough. He is a glutton. He's gonna eat all the pumpkins in your neighborhood, so you watch out. I especially had a lot of fun with the rendering on this piece. Like the design overall is very simple, but I went pretty hard on the rendering, trying to like make his fur nice and shiny and like really make the boniness and the muscles and the protrusions pop out. I also made sure to paint in lots of pumpkin gore and some detail of him like scratching open his other pumpkin, you know, breaking open his next snack. And I also added like a bunch of rim lighting to like really silhouette him and add a little bit more depth to his form. And I added a little simple background behind him as well. Just wanted to show him like consuming some pumpkins at night, just like you walk out on your back porch in the middle of the night to take your garbage out or something, and you're greeted with this guy. And if it was me, I would just Homer Simpson my way right back inside, lock the doors. I would definitely not want to meet this little fella. Like, I love cats, but even I have my limits. Okay, so next up, we've got content warnings for like blood and gore and like flesh, a little bit of body horror going on. So if you are not interested in seeing that, you know, maybe it's time to click away. This might be the end of the video for you, because the next drawing after this also has quite a bit of that going on. Are you gone yet? Are you ready? The next character design is based on this like blood demon board, which includes submissions from Creative Schlop, My Past Demon, MJ.Hildbrand, and Who Do I Know This Man? So this is another one that I really wanted to do in that first video that I didn't get to. So I did have a little bit of time to think about it that first time around. And honestly, by the time I started working on her in this video, I had a pretty clear idea of what I wanted to do for this character design. So basically my premise for her is that she's like a blood demon, or more accurately, a vengeance demon that deals in like broken hearts. Y'all know I'm like a big Buffy fan, and I really like the concept of vengeance demons in Buffy, but I also was like, hey, what if they like looked a little scarier, you know, something a little closer to this. So design wise, I knew I wanted to make her look pretty visually scary, but I also wanted her to have like a bit of a romantic appearance, since she does deal in affairs of the heart. I wanted her to look both scary and also like a little bit appealing at the same time. So for the base of her design, I wanted to give her like a super voluminous classical flesh dress, something that looks like a little bit pin-up-y and showgirl, something that also looks slightly old Hollywood. And that's also where her hairstyle came from. I gave her like a super cute, super cropped, fluffy curly bob, once again like a little bit Hollywood starlet inspired. I wanted to go with this type of hairstyle because I really wanted to make the hair texture look a little bit like roses, which will become a bigger part of her design as I go into this, and it's a pretty big part of her design like thematically. To enhance her demonic appearance, I of course gave her like a cute little demon tail, because you gotta have it. I gave her some wings down by the hips of her dress because I really like the silhouette element that gives. And I don't know if they're like necessarily functional wings. I do think she could like fly or hover at least, but I do like the aesthetic of wings that are like on the hips instead of the back. I think it's kind of a cool silhouette element. I of course gave her some big horns inspired by the salt and pepper shakers in my mood board, some long claws, and like a split open kind of exposed jaw, something to make her face look a little bit more terrifying while still keeping it appealing going. Like, she's got some classic lipstick on, she's got her like eye makeup all done, but I also made her eyes look super sunken in and like dark. Again, I was trying to make her face look like a little bit emaciated and ghoulish. I also gave her my signature pointy ears because you gotta have it. And later on in the coloring phase, you'll see that I also made the whites of her eyes like a really deep gray color, and I made her eyes themselves like a super light pale blue, something that just looks really haunting and ghostly. But the main kind of scary design element that I gave her was a gaping wound through her chest and going down her torso, something that kind of makes her guts look like they've been spilled out or taken out, and most importantly, something that exposes her bleeding heart, which is actually what I've decided to call this character. I think her whole thing as a demon is eating the hearts of those who have wronged the person who summons her. Basically, that is the deal. You summon her, and in return, she gets a tasty little snack. She gets to eat a heart. So in that way, I feel like she's like a little bit vampiric as well, but also just like a general flesh-eating monster. She's very flesh-focused. And since I had the hands with the chains and the blood bags with the roses in them, I definitely wanted to include those two elements as like thematic elements for this character. So I did give her like chains around her wrists and also some IV tubes flowing from those chains to blood bags with roses in them. I feel like this is kind of part of the whole like, I guess, summoning ritual, one may call it. I think in order to summon her, you have to like drip some of your own blood onto a rose, and then she is like bound by this until she accomplishes your vengeance for you. And I think the two like blood bags with the roses in them represent you and the person that has like scorned you in some way. And by eating the heart or fulfilling whatever vengeance you order, that connection is like severed. She is released from her pact, and I guess you've had your satisfaction through vengeance, maybe? I don't really recommend doing this, but it's a thing, I guess. Anyways, nearing the end of the illustration, I definitely went pretty hard on the rendering with this image. I'm sorry if it's a little bit too much. I always have such a difficult time knowing when to stop in general with rendering, and that definitely applies to gore as well, so I hope this doesn't like gross anyone out too much. But I did try to make her dress look just so fleshy and disgusting. It looks like a bunch of like steak or beef hanging off of her. Like, Lady Gaga could never. This is just like so much and so gross. And I also put her in this pose very intentionally with her like claws out to the side because I wanted to add like sinew and bits of flesh kind of trailing from her open chest wound onto her fingers as if she like opened up her chest wound herself. I also added a bunch of blood running down her neck and face to imply that she has just consumed a tasty heart. So lovely, so great. And as the very last step, I did want to add some kind of a background to this just to give it like a little bit more context. I didn't want to go too heavy though, so I messed around with a lot of gradient maps just to figure out something that would look kind of good, and I ended up messing around with them in a way that kind of looks like a portal opening behind her, which I thought ended up looking really cool. So that's sort of why I imagined the portal that she comes through when you like summon her or whatever. Honestly, really terrifying. I would not want to summon this thing. I don't recommend summoning this thing. Don't do it. She doesn't seem super nice. Okay, last up, we have content warnings for body horror, for gore, for general disturbing imagery. I think I went a little bit too hard on this one, and if you don't want nightmares, because I think this is definitely nightmare fuel, probably just skip this one, save it. Anyways, this last character is based on this roadkill inspired board, which includes images submitted by Tay_Pa_ Undead_ Impressions, Chris Same Cook, Rudy.punch.bowl, Patterson.Quinn, That One Person Axel, and Death Dove TWT. So this is another one that I didn't get to in that first video that I really wanted to do, and mentally I've been referring to this character as reanimated roadkill, so that should tell you a lot about the direction this design is going to go in. The general concept here is a spirit that haunts roads that have a lot of like you know, animal casualties or even human casualties through vehicular accidents. I basically wanted to come up with a super scary monster that just lurks on those roads that will appear to you if you do a slaughter by accident and just haunt you and get super mad. The vibe is the spirit of the forest taking revenge on cars for even being there in the first place. And whenever it comes to animals and like even lost people, I feel like this is a bit of a benevolent spirit. Like, as long as you are a pedestrian and not driving a car, this thing is not gonna hurt you. You're gonna be fine. It'll maybe even help you. It really doesn't like people with cars, because people with cars hurt the animals. And I definitely see this as like a protective spirit for animals. Like, if an animal is crossing the road and it looks like, oh no, it like might get hit by a vehicle or something, I would imagine this thing might appear in order to like protect it or shield it and just scare the crap out of the driver. That way they really have to slam on their brakes or like slow down. I like the concept of like a spirit appearing on the road to make drivers who are speeding like slow down so that they don't hit deer or rabbits or, like, God forbid, a little armadillo. So that's the basic concept that's going on here. And the physical form of this creature, I imagine, is comprised of the reanimated casualties that have, you know, since passed on the road. I'm someone who gets super sad anytime I see roadkill or like a dead animal on the side of the road. I hate it. It makes me super sad. So I wanted to create a creature that's just, you know, gonna try and prevent that, and maybe even do like a little bit of revenge when someone does hit an animal and is just super callous about it. So I went through a couple of different iterations of this design-wise. I wasn't sure exactly what direction I wanted to go in at first in terms of composition. I knew that I wanted to include some kind of humanoid element in there, though, mostly just to make this even more messed up. Like, there are, you know, hit and run accidents with people as well. So like I said, I think that this is, you know, potentially a benevolent spirit for humans too, just so long as they are pedestrians. And so I think that is also part of what comprises the physical form of the spirit. Just some like actual human elements in there a little bit. So at first I did a sketch of a physical form that was like mostly humanoid, but also had like some animal features to it, like some hooves. I made it really tall. I gave it like several heads with like animal jaws around the human part of the face, but I ultimately decided that was a little bit too human, because this is definitely more of like an animal focused character design. So I went back to the drawing board trying to get something that was a little bit more inherently animal going on. And I think this is the point at which I went maybe a little too far. From here, it just like keeps getting creepier and creepier, and I didn't really like show a whole lot of restraint. Sorry. I came up with a design that is like mostly deer focused, because unfortunately deer are just running out in front of cars all the time. But it's like a lot of different deer pieces put together. I gave it like a deer head and body in the back, and then almost like a weird centaur situation with a human form like coming out the front and giving it like an extra pair of like legs and stuff in the front. I also then decided that wasn't nearly quite enough, so I also like elongated the neck of the deer on top and opened it up as if it was a rib cage and like put a human form inside of that, so that we'd have more of a face up top, and I gave it several animal heads on top of that as well. I also replaced the human head of the bottom torso with a wolf head, because I wanted to use the human pieces sparingly, and I just added a bunch of antlers, a bunch of like feathers and wings. I added a giant pelt coming off the back, almost like a weird cape with, you know, some animal pieces coming off of that. There's some like armadillo armor going on the back of the deer body. It was a lot. I definitely maybe went too hard on this design, but it also just, you know, I was listening to a spooky story while I was drawing this. I was like in my element, and I don't get to draw like really spooky, terrifying stuff all that often, and I actually really like it. Like, I love drawing some body horror, so it was just kind of fun for me. Just see this as like a little Kira treat. Anyways, moving forward with the design, I definitely wanted to make sure that this creature came across as like at least a little bit endearing too. And I wanted to show some symbolism that this creature isn't just about like dead animals, it also like helps live animals. So I added a bunch of live animals kind of perched around and cowering behind this creature as if this creature is protecting them from a vehicle that's like incoming. I added like a raccoon, a possum, a little coyote. I added a cat sitting on the very top of its head and some birds perched on the antlers. I just really wanted to get across like this is a friend to the animals and to the creatures. It's gonna keep them safe even though it looks absolutely horrifying. So getting into the rendering of it all, I did want to show a little bit of gore and a little bit of decay just because, you know, these are parts of a creature that have kind of been, you know, put together by angry forest forces. So I did include some like open wounds, some blood and gore. I really kind of went hard on rendering the rib cage area, which looks absolutely gross. There's no correct anatomy going on here either. I just was like, yeah, you know, we're just gonna go crazy. We're not gonna really care too much. The coloring other than that was pretty straightforward. I was just using a lot of like earth tones, neutral colors, just coloring the creatures the color that the animals are. But an element that I did really want to make sure came across was the glowing eyes of all of the animals that are involved here, because I really wanted it to look like it's caught in headlights, like the way, you know, animal eyes reflect whenever they're hit with headlights. Wow, great explanation, Kira. Anyways, because of that, I did like end up giving this a little bit more of a background and a little bit more rendering than some of the other images, because I really wanted this to be like in context, the way you would see it if you were driving down a country road late at night and you were like maybe about to hit a deer or something, and this thing emerges from the woods in order to like really make you slow down, pump the brakes. It's gonna scare you a little bit for sure. I can't even like really imagine this thing moving around. Like the locomotion aspect of this, I don't know exactly how that works. I can imagine a little bit though, and I don't care for it. But anyways, with the lighting and rendering, I just, like I said, tried to make it look like the creature is getting hit with some headlights, and I kind of made it standing on a road. This is very much a POV. You were speeding on the country road and the forest creature got mad. Anyways, I finished up with a bunch of room lighting and some luminosity effects on like all the creature eyes, and that's our little nightmare fuel friend for today. Hello, and thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. These are the finished character designs, and I will be showing the spooky ones in this section, so again, if you don't want to see those, you can click away. This is the end of the video for you. But I really hope you guys enjoyed these designs and enjoyed this follow-up to that other video. I'm really glad that I was able to like revisit these and actually get to some of the ones that I didn't have a chance to get to in that first video, especially some of the ones that are a little bit spookier and more disturbing. I genuinely hope that they were not too much for you guys. Like I said earlier in the video, I have a terrible barometer for what is too much whenever it comes to spooky stuff. But I hope those of you who are into that sort of thing enjoyed. I did those for you. I did those for the spooky season. And do let me know whether or not you want to see more of that sort of thing or less of that sort of thing in the future. I definitely am a big fan of doing like some creature design and body horror and that sort of thing. And I don't get a chance to do it that often. So definitely let me know if you want to see more of that. And it is nearing the end of October, which makes me really sad, but I do have at least one more video coming out this month, and I'm just gonna keep on doing some spooky content into November probably, because who cares about being seasonally appropriate or whatever, it's fine. So if you want to see more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe, like the video, and give it an affirmation in the comments. And if you do want to see some behind the scenes content of some of the projects that I'm cooking up that are upcoming, you can subscribe to the Patreon for as low as $1 a month. But with all that said, thank thank you so much for watching, especially if you watched till the end of the video. But as always, the biggest thank you for this video and every single one of my videos goes to my patrons and especially my executive producers. Hesta Boom, James Doom, Alfred Nightingale, Ty Bear, Cinderus, Speak of the Devil, Tiro2, Donna Shipley, Mystic, Scribble, Mushroom Sita, Ghastly, Galaxy Stardust 035, Luxbar, My Name is A, Miss Fenris, Becca, Nylord Nam, Cyrus Orion, Jenny Craftsma, I Do TKD, Ren, Band Off the Yellow, Cloud Max, Velly Smelly, Stabby Horse, Heebie Jeebies, Cardia X, Christina Kimtia Art, Fiasco, Mossy Raven, Silver, 2 Prism, I'm not saying that name on the internet, ABW Mix, Icecavan, Awindu, Liana, Ermlargene, Breeza, Phoenix, PNG Not Found, Freedom and Gus Gus, Dodo, Zyl S, Agent Sketchy, Thea Maya, Lovisa, Eloquent Silence, Sushi McNushi, Hypno, Sweet Winter Garden, Gravity Drop, I Hang Out with Cats at Parties, and Bean the Bread.